Welcome back, Dynamic Gang. If you're new to the channel, you already know what to do. So I want to go over a few things. I wanted to make this video to give some of the cards that I used to play before Scrap Raptor and Scrap Factory. The two cards are not going to be on this list because those were way before Scrap Raptor had any support, and along with the link summoning that they had, the Scrap Wyvern. So we're not going to have those three cards on here. So I'm going to make a quick video. I'm going to show you exactly what cards I used to use because first let's go over the cards that came out for the scraps when they first came out. So you had, of course, Scrap Beast. And basically he was your go-to. This was your engine. Basically your Scrap Chimera and Scrap Beast. These were the engines you can splash into like pretty much anything. And as a scrap user, it's almost like your favorite football team or your baseball team. You know, even if your team isn't good, you still support it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I always try to make this deck work. Unfortunately, there wasn't any good cards to make this function properly. I mean, I was pretty much 50-50. When I went to locals with this deck. I had good days and I had bad days, mostly bad days, because this deck just couldn't keep up with Light Swarms, Black Wings. So, it really wasn't that quick because it didn't have any good support. So, we're going to go over a few cards. There's these cards that I splashed into my deck. I tried to make it work. And because this is my favorite archetype, that's how I buy my Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I always look at cards, what I can do to splash into my deck, to make my deck run better. Scraps have gotten great support, but it's a little too late. It's a little too, what's that thing I'm trying to say? A little too late, or a little bit too much, a little bit too late. I don't know. It's one of those sayings. I can't remember exactly what it says. But to make a long story short, this was, I wanted to give some of these cards that I don't play in the deck anymore just because Scrap Raptor and Scrap Factory really, changed the way this deck really works. And now that you have Fossil Dig, you can actually use 3 of those, and that's a whole nother 3 cards to search. So to make a long story short, we're going to go over a few things. So the Chaos Hunter, she's pretty good. This was good against the Chaos Control deck, like people that played the what was that? The Sorcerer, the Chaos Sorcerer that you remove 1 dark and 1 light, and you get him on the field, and he removes 1 face up monster from the field, because at the time the Black Luster Soldier at beginning was banned, so you really couldn't use it. So you had the Chaos Sorcerer. I think that's what he was, the Chaos Sorcerer. And there was other cards that would remove, especially with the Dragon Rulers. Chaos Hunter was just a really good card to have. So, and the reason why you have to put these kind of cards into scraps back at the day is because they didn't have a lot of good summoning power. There was only like normal summons, so it was like I even forgot to put double summoning on there, because that was like one of the magic cards I used to use, was double summoning, just because it was hard to, they really didn't have any cards of special summon. And the one card they did have the special summon was, Scrap Orthros. And then you also had the Scrap Breaker. So with these, you would have to special summon it. They could destroy themselves, but they have to target a scrap monster. So it's not going to stay on the field that long. So you just have to play around with it. But, and the crazy part is with him, you can special summon him if your opponent has a monster. So if you're going first, he's like a brick in your hand, the Scrap Orthros, you need to have a scrap already on the field in order to special summon him. So even if you were to use some kind of card to get another monster on the field, he can't special summon unless there's another scrap on the field. So again, there wasn't any great support for the scrap archetype at that time. But we're going to go over a little bit more on this. So we already talked about the Chaos Hunter. I think she's a great side card still to this day, because Cyber Dragons are still a thing. Was it Cyber Dark Dragons or whatever they removed from play in order to special summon it because a Power Bond is still a thing. We had Cyber Dragon. Again, this was a great going second card, because if your opponent doesn't have I forgot to mention on this one, you can actually special summon her on your opponent's turn. So if your opponent is special summoning, you can special summon her. You have to discard a card, which is good because it puts stuff in the graveyard for either the Scrap Chimera to take over or just to have a target. So anyway, to get back to what I was saying. So Cyber Dragon, and you can also use that fusion that they had. If you're playing against machines, you can actually scoop it up and you can go right into the fusion. So Cyber Dragon was pretty good back in the day. Again, this was a card that I used because again, you'd have to special summon in order, just to have field presence, just in case you end up with him in your hand. You need to be able to tribute him in order to get him because he's a 5-star. So again, you kind of hope that you would have a target in the graveyard in order for him to have some kind of target in order to bring onto the field. So it was like this deck was definitely something to play around with. Like I said, man, it was a 50-50 deck. You either win some and you lose some. I lost more than I won, but again, I would never trade scraps for the world. I always try to make this deck run. Everybody's like, oh, why don't you play? I had the Black Wings. I had Fortune Ladies. I had Light Sworns. And you know what? A lot of those times were like it's like an autopilot, because it's like the same thing over and over and over again. When I played people with this kind of deck, to make a long story short, they didn't know what to side against me. I mean, you had Gores and Match and, and certain other cards, but I mean, I didn't have a really draw power, so I really didn't have any way to go into my deck really, except for, Scrap Storm, but that was about it. Other than that, I really didn't go into my deck to really get anything. So it's I either draw into it or I don't. So you did have Pot of Duality, but the problem with Pot of Duality is that you can't special summon the turn you use it. So it's kind of like, great, I used it, but now I can't even special summon. So there goes all my options for, my scraps. Again, this is another one you remove too. So you have to remember that scraps are earth. There's no dark, there's no light, so it's all earth. So even if they had Shadow Imprisoning Mirror or Light Imprisoning Mirror, it doesn't work on me because my monsters aren't light or dark. So the only thing that really stops it was the trap card where you can only have one type. Unfortunately, all my, as you can see, you got Beast, you got Beast Warrior, you have Machine, you have there was also where's the other one? You got the Wing Beast, you got a fish, and then you got a warrior. So, and then insect. So a lot of the so the real trap that really stopped me was, I don't know if it was Goes and Match or the other one, where you can only have one type of basically, and down here, you got dragons. So they're all over the place, but at least their attributes were all earth. This was a great card. This was pretty solid because you would always have like a lot of targets in the graveyard in order to do it. I found this one kind of bulky, so I really didn't use it that much. I used him maybe the first time I pulled him when I first got it. But he was actually really hard to keep in to actually play because you have to have exactly 5. And a lot of times it was kind of hard to, I mean, you did have Pot of Avarice where you can actually take your, shuffle 5 of your monsters back in there. So, I mean, I guess that's a thing, but it was kind of hard to play my scraps with him. Of course, we always had the psychic build. We did use this. It is a dark tuner, so I was able to use certain synchros monsters that needs a dark tuner in order to do it. You would use that, and there was, I don't think I put it on here, but anyway, the quick play card that lets you special summon psychics. So that was a thing. I think you could only have one or two at the time, but it was still a target, and it was still in your deck, and that was another thing that I could search for. Again, he was special summon, and I was able to have him in my hand and do something with it. But this was another card I tried to work on, but to be honest with you, it just throws it into the grave. I mean, you do get a draw card off of it, but again, these were all cards that I was trying every weekend. Like every other week, I would be going to the locals. I mean, every week I go to the locals, but every other week I'd be changing up my deck to try to think about how it could run smoother. Mech Lords were a real big help for my deck. Destroying everything. I mean, Mech Lords were the go-to because we didn't have Exceeds, we didn't have Links, we only had Synchros. So, Synchros and Fusions, of course, and Rituals. So, I mean, like, if they had a Fusion or, again, my deck really lost to, when it came to the heroes, because they had the Fusions. So, if I summoned him out there, at least he's a 4,000 beater unless I took damage, and then he's going to go down. I try not to use this Mech Lord because if you have him on the field, no other monster can attack, but he does negate one spell. So, I mean, that's a thing. So we did have Notoria Beast. We did have Notoria Barkion, where they did dispels and traps. So that was actually pretty cool. There was a lot of ways to get them onto the field just because everything on my was Earth, so it was pretty cool. This card was absolutely a must in my scrap deck. When this card first came out, this was bonkers. This card, even if you stopped its summoning with Solomon Judgment or Solomon Warning, and he's removed from the field, he still would special summon. And that's the same thing with over here. A lot of times with the Scrap Dragon and Twin Scrap, even if you Solomon Judgment them or Solomon Warning them, they're not summoned, but their card reads that even, it doesn't tell you the time of when it gets destroyed or when it goes to the graveyard. So even if it's not summoned, the crazy rule is that you could still have a target and have them come on over to the onto the field. So it was actually kind of crazy how that worked. This deck, actually, Colossal Fighter was a thing. So if you see how that's 28 in Colossal Fighter, a lot of times if they suicide, Colossal Fighter would target itself, so it would bring it back, and then I would have to go with Scrap Golem Scrap Goblin in order to keep myself from dying. But that's the only real threat that I really had with this deck, unless you're removing it. But Colossal Fighter was kind of crazy to go against. Let me see. This card, I know it's banned, but when it wasn't banned, this was OP. This is another monster reborn. You're putting a target back into the grave, and you're special summoning. It's a level 7, so you do have right here, you do have your Scrap Mind Reader, but the problem with that is you need to have another, in order to use that, you need to use it with other scrap monsters, but a lot of times you can work around it. I know Phoenix Chain was a thing back in the day because you didn't have all these hand traps. You did have, what's that, Drill Lockingbird or whatever the hell that was, but nobody really played it back then. So nobody really cared about that. But this card was definitely OP for the deck. Again, I had 3 of him. Every now and then I would side him in to put him into the deck, but it was it's either him or him, and I'd rather choose him because this one he pops himself. So it's kind of like, Scrap Chimera is definitely. Again, I only have the cards that came out that I'm showing you here. So Scrap Factory and Scrap Raptor was not even a thing. Scrap Wyvern wasn't even a thing. That came out like 6-7 years after this. Where was that support when I needed it? It's crazy. Scrap Goblin. I know a lot of people only played one of him. I played two because he was a great wall. He destroyed himself. I was able to plus off him. Scrap Golem was, again, if you drew into him, he was a brick. You couldn't get rid of him, and that's why you need to have all these other monsters on there in order to tribute him. And unfortunately, you need to have like double summoning and chain summoning, but I'm going to get to chain summoning later so you can see what I'm talking about. I never used him. I'm just showing you the scrap support that came out with it. It was garbage. So basically the only monsters you really use that I see people use when it came to an engine was the Scrap Beast, Scrap Chimera, Scrap Goblin, Scrap Golem, and even then sometimes not really, depends on what engine you're putting this in. And your Scrap Orthros. I know a lot of people that didn't even use it back in the day. So it was kind of hard to play around with this deck. Not a lot of people really cared about scraps because Light Swarm was really big back then. Black Wings were like huge back then. And still is, I guess, because you're still making up more support, right? But the Scrap Mind Reader is okay, but in order to special summon him, he has to go on to this second main phase too. So it's kind of like, I guess you could set up for a play for next turn for your, like maybe you can go for a snack Notoria Beast or whatever, or Notorious Barkion in order to set up for your opponent's turn, I guess. I don't know. I never really used him that much. But these are the supports that came out. It's garbage, in my opinion. Scrap Recycler. This is a great card now, especially when you had Mechana and all the rest of that machines. People use this card. But this card is garbage for scraps because there's only this card, this card, this card, and I think that's it. I don't think there's any more machines. Unless, okay, that's a machine. So you only have 3 targets and himself, right? To really use it. So, it would be better if it was supposed to be like for any scrap card. So I never put this in my deck, ever. I hated this card when it first came out. I thought it was useless because it would destroy your monster. So any monsters other than scraps that you would special summon this damn card would destroy. So you had to work around this card. You either had to set this up in the beginning for the first one in order to make this thing work. Because once you got other monsters on the field, like all your other synchros, and you special summon him, he's going to destroy everything. So you had to work around him. He was just annoying. I never really played with him. But now, he's like a black Rose Dragon. So that's basically what it is. A little mini Black Rose Dragon. Anyway, he's good now, but I really hated him back in the day. Same thing with Scrap Shark. Now that you have Scrap Factory, he became okay. Because you didn't have Scrap. When Scrap Factory came out, you didn't have Scrap Raptor or Scrap Wyvern at the time. You had actually the Supply Squad, which is a continuous magic card where if you destroy something or you destroy any card on your side of the field when it's your turn, you draw a card. Only once per turn though. So that was a thing. But other than that, he just destroys himself through anything, whether it's a magic, trap, or monster effect. So I don't know what to tell you, man. Scraps didn't have good support when they first came out. This guy's ridiculous. Nobody's used him. I never used him. He's a warrior. All these look machines to me, but hey, what am I going to say? Again, worthless. I don't use it, and nobody else that I see uses it. And he's just bulky, 2100, and he's a level 5. Nah, come on, man. No one's going to use it. I've tried to work with him He's good if I'm trying to go into Barkion or Beast, depending on my build for that week. So I have used him before, but other than that, he's a he's a side card really. Like not even a side card, but like if I feel kind of adventurous that weekend, I might put him in, depending on how it is. I forgot to put Power Giant in this. Power Giant does manipulate levels. I already went over what I used to have in the card. I still love Power Giant. He's another Earth, and you discard one level 4 or lower, and then that becomes the level of whatever you do. He's a level 6, and he's 2200. So the Power Giant, I don't have him on here. I forgot to put him on here. It slipped my mind, but it's in my main deck now. He's just a fantastic card. You could splash him in anything, any kind of things that you want to do for levels. You have to remember that's all we had back in the day was fusion, rituals, and synchros. Again, this card I try to make work. Not every single week did I play him, because he's either you either go plus on him, or he's, depending on how much damage you take, because my scraps were taking damage. Like I said, man, there wasn't a lot of support for my deck, and I tried to make it work. And sadly, sometimes it wouldn't. So, to make a long story short, he tried to do what he could do for the deck, and you have to kind of get rid of a magic. So it's kind of like, I don't know. He didn't do good in that. Oh, I forgot to put Gen X Birdman. He was another great card that I would put in there. He's a level 3 Dark Tuner. I think he's a Wing Beast. And Gen X Birdman, you can only had one of him, and I put him in my deck a couple times too, because he's good at discarding and special summoning himself. So you can actually go into plays with him too. This was another card that I had that I loved in my deck, because he is an Earth. He's a level 2, and he can special summon himself if your opponent has a monster, and I don't think if you don't control no monsters or something like that. So you could set up with some pretty good plays for Notoria Beast and Notoria Barkion. So again, if I'm butchering any names, I am so sorry. It's just like I'm making this late at night. Again, this is the same thing with my man up here with these two. You can actually remove an Earth, and then he special summons himself, and then you pretty much use him as a tribute for the Golem. The Tricky, the same thing. You can special summon him by discarding, so you actually put a target into the graveyard. I know he's a Wind, but he's a level 5. So if you special summon him and then normal summon him, you can pretty much go plus and go into your Scrap Dragon. These were all stuff that I utilized. Like I said, I love scraps. I always try to make it work. But like I said, as a person who loves football, my Giants, New York Giants, man, they're not doing good, but that's my team. I'm going to stick with them, and that's how my deck is. I have all these other decks I like to play, and I do play them every now and then with, going to other tournaments and stuff like that. I'm talking about when I was back in the day when I was really not collecting Yu-Gi-Oh, but opening packs and then using them as cards. But now that I'm collecting them, I don't really do that anymore. So I don't go to locals or anything like that. If I do stuff, like I said, the last past New Year's, I had the family over. We played for cash. I know Konami's going to be like, they don't do that, but hey, this is a private setting. This is in our own house. It was like $460 or something like that I said. It was like 9 people. Everybody put $50 in. It was pretty cool. Let me see, where was I? Okay, so this was the big card that I would actually use in my scrap, because my scraps were able to, in order to do chain links, this deck is beautiful for this. It is known for its, just chain linking. You chain link 1, chain link 2, chain link 3, chain link 4. And, this card right there helped me out a lot. So this card really did a lot of good stuff back in the day. Again, you don't really need it now because Scrap Factory and Scrap Raptor, I did put it in there. Okay, so that was another target for you to hit for your, I know that you only run 1 or 2 of him because you only run 1 of him. So, I mean, like, it was like a take or give. But again, what other options did I have? Scraps were struggling. So now we're going to go over the cards that came out, and I'm going to tell you exactly why I believe that scraps were. I see what they were trying to do, but the deck is fun. It was a rogue deck, but it wasn't competitive enough. So you see how all these monsters I had to splash in there. So this one says, select 3 scrap monsters in your graveyard. Your opponent places one of them. You special summon it to either player side of the field, and the other ones get removed from play. So, a lot of times, I would never use this card. I never used a card in my life. This was another one, Scrap Lube. Basically select 1 scrap monster in your graveyard, special summon that monster from the graveyard, and the effects are negated. When this card is removed from the field, destroy the selected monster. When the monster is removed from the field, destroy this card. You can only... Oh, and you can't conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this. So, yeah, nobody played that. That's just... Why would you play that? This was another card nobody played. I see what you're trying to do. You could chain it, but then certain things lose timing, and certain things like if there's no more target for your scrap dragon or your twin scrap dragon, then it won't go off. So it's just a weird card. Again, select 1 face-up scrap monster you control, destroy it, and all face-up scrap monsters you control gain 1,000 until the end of the phase. So I don't think it was worth it. This was a crucial run 3 of in any kind of thing. I see people do it all the time. They splash it in all the other decks they did. Karakuri and all the rest of them. I've seen them play this. This is just a really good card. So you have to run 3 of them. Scrapyard, another one's a searcher. That's basically your only searcher you had until Scrap Factory and Scrap Raptor. But anyway, this was another great card that I used to use back in the day because there was not a lot of draw power in my deck. So basically, you would activate this as Chainlink 4. And I already said, I showed you how easy it is for you to do chain links in scraps. And what this card does is it lets you draw 2 after Chainlink 4. So the only thing is you can't activate it in multiples. That's about it. But other than that, you get to go +2. But I know it's kind of slow because it's a trap, but you have to remember when I'm talking about this. This was in 2011, 2012. So this card was okay. Not a lot of people wanted to waste that. You still had you had Night Beam and what was the other one? Mystical Space Typhoon, but nobody's going to waste it on that. So, and you can still chain it. The only one you can't chain it on was Night Beam. This was another good one that I used in my deck. It says, activate only when a card on the field is destroyed by a card effect. Select 2 spell and trap cards on the field and destroy them. Now, the problem with this one is that it doesn't say up to. So you need to have 2 targets. So basically, if they don't have 2 on their side, you have to pick one of theirs and then pick one of yours. So it was kind of like a catch-22 on that. Dark Coffin was great because when Stardust Dragon was out, he was a headache. He was a fucking headache. So a lot of times this card would target. It wouldn't target because your opponent has to either randomly select one card in their hand and discard it, or they have to destroy a monster. But because it's a choice that the person's making, Stardust Dragon can't negate it. So it's actually a really cool thing that I did against Stardust Dragon. So that was a good card. It was pretty fun. I didn't put that in every time I went to locals, I didn't put it in. I must have put it in maybe once or twice, and it was fun going against Stardust, but that card right there was pretty crazy. This was another one that's kind of garbage. Activate only during damage calculations if a defense position scrap monster on the field is being attacked. It gains 2,000 defense and it's destroyed at the end of the battle phase. And what I mean by that is your card is destroyed at the end of the battle phase. So basically what you would use is you'd pretty much use that, because you know how he's only 1300 and then you do another 2000 damage. That's about 3300. But that's the only time. This one you really didn't need it because, you know, he already destroys himself at the end of it anyway. The reason why I had this in here and I didn't have Thousand Eyes Restrict is because Thousand Eyes Restrict was banned. So we did have instant fusion. And he's a level 5. He's special summoned. I can either sync or I can use it as a tribute to get my golem out. That was why I had it in there. And this was the card that I used because I didn't have like a lot of level 5. I mean, I did, but he's like, I always thought he looked cool. This was another one that I had. He didn't come out right away. I think it was like a year after Scraps came out that he came out. And, you know, it's a level 7. We didn't have a lot of targets. It was either a level 9, a level 8 and a level 9. So we didn't have a lot of targets. So we did have this. We did have the Scrap Dragon. The reason I put that, I wanted to show you guys, is because these were the original OGs of the deck right here. And I know a lot of people didn't really use the Twin Scrap Dragon because he was a level 9. There had other level 9s. I mean, like, if you're going to do that, I guess you can go for Trishula because Trishula wasn't banned at the time. So, but the thing about this is you don't need to have 3 in order to make a level 9, where Trishula was. So this was, you just needed 1 and 1. So it was your go-to. And the great thing about this is it just took the cards of your opponent and bounced it back to their hand. So it didn't destroy it. So Stardust Dragon, and a lot of other monsters that would protect themselves can't really protect themselves because they're not being destroyed. So, I mean, like, it was a fun card. Now, to get back into what I was talking about with this one, I never once used this at all. So I'm going to read it to you. Activate only when a scrap monster you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard. Destroy all face-up spells and traps on the field. I had a lot of spells and traps too. This destroys every goddamn thing. And I didn't like it that much. So I stopped it. And Stardust Dragon was a thing back then. So yeah. And, you know, the Overdrive and whatever they had. This was a great card that I used because it's a level 3 speed. So, I mean, or 5, whatever you want to say. So Stardust Dragon couldn't really stop it because it's a counter trap. So when a spell or trap or a monster effect is activated that would destroy 2 or more cards on the field, you can negate the activation, and if you do, banish it. So a lot of times we did have Heavy Storm back then, and they would try to, you know, go ahead and do that, and they had other monsters destroy, and that's just a really great card to have. I don't think Stardust Dragon really, I think I got that mixed up with another card. So Stardust Dragon really didn't do a thing with that. This is why, in my opinion, Scraps really failed a lot. And I'm going to tell you why. So I've never played this card. I think it's useless because I'm going to read it to you. Okay. So not only do you need 3 monsters to make it, it's a level 10. So then you say once per turn, you could select 1 card you control and up to 3 cards your opponent's graveyard and destroy your selected card, and then take the cards you selected to the deck, and then you could destroy your opponent's card. And then it says either by battle or card effect, and it's sent to the graveyard. Select 1 non-scrap monster in your graveyard. Now, here's my whole problem with this. This would have been great if it said on either person's turn, you can only activate this effect on your turn. So let's say that they used Monster Reborn or Call the Haunted, and then you could take this and then you say, okay, what's your target? And once per turn, you could destroy one of your cards and then put that back into their deck. That would have been great. I mean, that would have been phenomenal. But it's not on either person's turn. It's only on your turn. So this card's not really good. I mean, I see people trying to make it work, but it should have been on either player's turn. That would have been great. So, and it would have been a quick effect, you know. If it was a quick effect, oh, man, this card would have been OP, but it's not. So anyway, I know the video is kind of long. I just want to share a lot of the cards that I used to use. I don't think they get enough respect like they used to, because let's face it, when Scrap Raptor and Scrap Factory came out and Scrap Wyvern, you don't need any of these other cards. All these other cards, basically all these cards made this deck work, right? But with 3 cards, you took out all these cards. That's crazy. 3 cards took out like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can't even count. Like it's already past 10. So three cards replaced your whole deck. Enough said. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will talk to you guys later.